everyone. Welcome to Dean's Chat, where we discuss all things podiatric medicine. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Jensen. I'm the Dean at the Arizona College of Podiatric Medicine and the host for the Dean's Chat podcast. My guest today is no stranger to anyone in podiatric medicine, Dr. William Scherer. Dr. Scherer is currently the Senior Podiatric Medical Advisor for Bako Diagnostics. He's held this position since 2017. Dr. Scherer did his undergraduate work at the University of Miami, and he graduated in the inaugural class at the Barry University School of Podiatric Medicine in 1989. Dr. Scherer completed his 2-year surgical training program at the West Valley Hospital and Health Center in California. Dr. Scherer is also board certified by both the American Board of Foot and Ankle Surgery and the American Board of Podiatric Medicine. Welcome to Dean's Chat, Dr. Scherer.
Again, thank you again, Dr. Jensen, for this wonderful introduction, and thank you for hosting Dean's Chat as a great service for our profession, and I look forward to participating today.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining me. You know, Dr. Scherer, we kind of have a fireside chat vibe on Dean's Chat, so if it's okay with you, let's just go with Bill and Jeff.
Look, again, I'm looking for the fire here. I'm in South Florida. It's a little hot out there, but if you've got some marshmallows, and some good drinks, I'm ready to go.
Sounds like a plan. You know, you've had a fascinating career, Bill, but most people associate you, my listeners and my viewers, with Bako Diagnostics, right? And they are one of the most generous companies in our profession. Literally, you can't go to a meeting without having their participation and generous sponsorship. How'd you get involved with Bako, and how'd you become the senior advisor back in 2017?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. I don't think I've ever told this story, but when you really think about it, Bako Diagnostics really had its genesis, if you really want to get technical, even back at Barry University. And how that happened was really, basically Dr. Brad and Dr. Wayne BakoDx were students at Barry University. I think both of them may even attended the undergrad there, but they certainly were at the podiatry school. I taught radiology, the foot and ankle, and I also taught public health or community minority medicine for about 17 years. So I remember when Brad was a student in my class as a senior, literally he just is in his senior year, getting ready to graduate, and he came up to me after class saying, he was thinking about going to medical school, and I'm, again, I'm kind of scratching my head because my father is an MD, my sister is an MD, my mother's a nurse. I had opportunities to go to medical school. I personally chose podiatry, especially Barry, because it's sort of I really enjoyed the work lifestyle balance that podiatry offered. So I kind of said to him, I said, look, are you sure you want to do this? It's kind of like starting all over again. And he was very adamant that he wanted to do this. He had a vision even as a student. So I was able to follow his career, when he went into medical school and then when he went into his residency. So he became a not only a pathologist, but a dermatopathologist. And I think, if you're not familiar with the term, a dermatopathologist is basically a pathologist with specialization in dermatology. And most of the specimens, we as podiatrists are sending to laboratories really are going to be skin and nail especially. And for, the longest time, the podiatry market was really fragmented with the larger players that really didn't give much attention to podiatry. So really, when Bako Diagnostics was formed, and I think now they're about 15 years they've been in business, they really started very small and then expanded really quickly. But their single focus was to be the best dermatopathology laboratory, or specifically pathology laboratory, for the lower extremity, and focusing on the niche market of podiatry that no other company was doing. And other companies, certainly would want our business as podiatrists, but they didn't really cater, as much as Bako Diagnostics did. And one of the kind of principles, or the guiding principles of the mission statement of the company was not only to provide excellent laboratory services, but also to be a partner with our profession by giving back. And Bako is, I don't know the exact number, but it's well over $1 million per year for the past 15 years. They basically use feeding back into our profession either through sponsorship of local or regional or state meetings. They're big sponsors with APMA nationals, and almost all of their money is geared towards educating the podiatric profession regarding dermatology issues, skin issues, nail issues, skin cancers, even small fiber peripheral neuropathy. Because, as we discussed a little bit off the record, that there's a bit of a gap in our education as a podiatrist in those areas. So what happened was, I really started as a client, okay? Like day one, when they opened the lab, I said, of course, I'll use your lab. And I started sending specimens. And I was just like in radiology, I ordered a lot of MRIs because I saw diagnostic value with that. I immediately recognized the fact that if you have a lab catering to podiatry, they were the only lab that began to make sense with me because, if anybody who knows me, I've got a very long history that not only did I do a surgical residency and in orthopedics and did a lot of high caliber surgery. The fact of the matter is, when I started my practice in South Florida, I'm getting all these old patients with nail conditions, and quite honestly, I didn't want it. Okay, I'm like, why do we have all these fungus toenail patients coming to see me? But it was virtue of the fact that I'm in South Florida, and as a podiatrist, they were coming to see me for that. So it took me probably a year or so to realize that, look, I'm either going to drive myself crazy, or I need to start looking at nails or onychomycosis like a real scientist and treat it like a real disease. And at that point, I had an epiphany that, okay, in order to understand this, I need to rely on laboratory diagnostics. And then I started publishing papers where I won several awards, where my articles were published in JAPMA on onychomycosis. And then I started getting invited for speaking engagements. And it really became kind of a passion, not by choice. It's not like if you asked me in college, hey, do I want to be an expert in onychomycosis? Absolutely not. Okay. But it was something that, as a business person, you have to recognize where your market is at. If I stayed in California or in Los Angeles, more likely than not, I would have been in an orthopedic practice like Dr. Maurice Perry, who was my junior resident. He decided to stay there. So he does all sorts of ankle and rear foot trauma because he is in 2 different orthopedic groups, and I probably would have gone that direction. But because I wanted to return to South Florida, this is where my roots are, unfortunately, South Florida has a very large geriatric patient population. So in diving into, diagnostic services, I started to question, things that before Bako existed, I would always be doing KOH prep or fungal cultures. Even if you want to get back to, probably, I'm going to really date myself here, with DTM or dermatophyte test medium cultures, that we would actually do in our office. For a few years, we actually did that until, I'm probably going to say around 1993 or so, the CLIA came in, and if you're going to do a DTM culture, you had to be CLIA certified. And really, one of my first articles that I published in the journal, other than the surgical articles that I published in Journal of Foot and Ankle and other ones, was on DTM cultures, where I did, I think it was maybe 100 of them, where I compared it to sending to a laboratory. This is even before Bako was created. It was another general laboratory. And my conclusion at the time was that dermatophyte test medium tests that we're doing in our offices are completely worthless because there's just no diagnostic value there. So I published that in JAPMA. I believe I won a Stickle Award for that paper, and I was invited to lecture the next year at the Florida FPMA SAM meeting, which for me was a huge honor, being from Florida. And I'm really young at the time. I was probably 29, 30 years old or so. I'm now invited to be on the stage the first time, and of course you're always a little nervous. I'm being honest. And I remember I gave the lecture basically based on my JAPMA article. As I'm walking off the stage, you're kind of proud of yourself, like, yeah, all right, I did a good job. I didn't mispronounce any words. I didn't faint. I didn't say anything stupid. As I'm walking out the hallway, this older podiatrist grabs me by the jacket, and he's getting ready to punch me. And he goes, like you son of a bitch, how dare you, give that lecture? And I'm like taken back. I'm like, what did I say that was so offensive? And this older podiatrist looked me in the eye and he said, you are now taking $10.60 away from me because now you're saying these DTM cultures are worthless. And quite honestly, I I just don't think that way. That never crossed my mind that this would be an issue. And I guess what happened was, even to this day, I'm a little shocked. But the fact of the matter is that I follow the evidence, I follow the data, I follow what my gut feeling is. And I said to the doctor, I said, well, look, if you believe in this test so much, then you take 100 of your own patients and prove me wrong. Well, of course they didn't do that. Of course, no other podiatrist. The one probably biggest gripe I have against our profession is that we just don't publish, okay? And what happens is that we're never going to get the respect that we deserve or want from the medical community if we're not publishing and doing research and pushing the envelope. But when you do Medline searches for onychomycosis, like 99% of the articles are dermatology. And that's really a fault of our profession collectively. Now, I've published dozens and dozens of papers. Dr. Tracy Vahovic has published articles, Brian Markinson and a few other docs, but the doctors publishing on onychomycosis or doing research or in podiatry you could count them on one hand. So what happened is that I was invited, by Dr. Bako to give some lectures on onychomycosis for the lab. And what happened is that, every maybe 6 months or so, I might give a lecture. It was a lot of fun. It was not, something that I felt that, okay, there's a big opportunity here. I just did it because, I'm passionate on this subject. And, I guess technically I'm an expert. Okay. I'm not going to claim expertise, but other people believe that I'm an expert. And then what happened was that there was a shift at the top where Dr. Brad decided to retire, and they brought in other investors and CEOs. And what happened was they were looking for a medical director, and quite honestly, they interviewed me and basically they offered me the position, and I basically thought to myself, okay, this is really a cool opportunity, but the negative thing is that there's going to be a lot of travel involved, meaning I'm going to be on the road about 60 days out of the year, away from my family, away from my home. And really, this opportunity presented itself at the perfect time, because both of my kids, specifically my son, my youngest child, was literally graduating high school and off to college. So for the first time in 23 years, it's just going to be my wife and I alone with no kids. And I said, well, before I commit to this opportunity, I want to speak to my wife about this, because, discussing that, and as anybody who's been married a long time, I think my wife, I was probably a little disappointed how quickly she told me to say, yes, take this opportunity and no, enjoy yourself, go to Detroit 3 times a year and have fun. And I'm going to get the whole bed to myself and peace and quiet around the house. But really the big factor is that it was really an intersection of a perfect time with a perfect company with the perfect, passion that I had. And as you've seen before, anybody knows you cannot go to any meeting without seeing Bako banners, Bako sponsorship, and really it's very, very authentic. And yes, they're a company. Yes, they want to make money, but they've got 200 employees, and it's a very big operation. And what happens is that, the truth of the matter is every podiatrist in the country has a choice of what laboratory to send your specimens to, just like you have a choice of what MRI center or what hospital that you want to use. And really, Bako just hopes that you consider using them for your services but certainly by the fact that I think they are the best dermatopathology lab for our profession, but also the fact that they give back and they support our profession quite well. And there's always that fine line between, corporate influence and the profession. But quite honestly, HICA Insurance, Bako Diagnostics, some of the orthotic companies are very, very good at walking that line. So sure, it's a competitive business, but there's plenty of room for lots of different laboratories and lots of different insurance companies. I just happen to have this opportunity, and I really couldn't be happier or prouder with any other company to be affiliated with. So that's kind of how it started.
Right. Well, I think it's interesting. I think the most important thing you said there, lots of important things, but with that, it's an educational base.
Yes.
I mean, Bill, you leave the heat of Miami every summer and come to the heat of Phoenix to do a biopsy lab for my students. And I can't tell you how much they love it.
As you know, one of the things that I've implemented over the past 2 years or so, actually it started with your school. It started about 6 or 7 years ago. I wasn't the one who started it. But what happened is the Bako decided to sponsor 2-hour hands-on biopsy workshops at the schools, of which the Arizona school was the first one to actually request that going back, maybe 7 or 8 years. So what happened is that it was, kind of my idea to pitch to the company that, hey, wouldn't this be kind of cool if we could do this at all the schools and offer it to them? And some of these schools, maybe will incorporate with their curriculum. Some of it will be after hours. Some of it will be totally volunteer. Maybe it's with a dermatology club. But basically, all 11 schools now I've actually had the pleasure and honor to speak at all 11. But the one school, Arizona, as much as I love visiting Phoenix, and your school is absolutely beautiful, I'm always invited in like September or August, where it's about 110 or 120 degrees out, that I feel like I'm on like I'm a hot dog on a grill. But the fact of the matter is that I'm going to basically do what's in the best interest of the school, and if that fits in your curriculum, look, I would love to be there in February or March, and maybe please, we can do that. But in the event, I'm more than happy to come out there and spend some time, not only with the students, but I do like the Phoenix, Arizona, although the summers are a little bit hot.
A little bit. Well, the reason that is, Bill, is because we've incorporated your lab into our dermatology course, and that's when it's being taught. I mean, we can shift that around if you want. We can talk about that more later. Another plug for Bako, right? They have given $100,000 to each of the schools and colleges of podiatric medicine to put into a scholarship fund. And we are so appreciative of that, because every year we take the money and we split it between 3 or 4 students, and they're very, very grateful. So I think it's just tremendously beneficial. And our students love it, and we do appreciate Bako's support for sure. And I thank you for...
With that in particular, and I do want to be clear on that is actual a separate component of Bako Diagnostics, that is their foundation.
Right.
So in reality, myself, Bako has nothing to do with that. In other words, I shouldn't say nothing to do with it. They have nothing to do with how the money is managed. In other words, the company gives the foundation the money, and then the foundation, I believe, has 5 or 6 physician volunteers, and I'm sure you're well aware of, and then they pick and choose, who is going to receive these funds, where's it going to go, and how's it going to be spent. But quite honestly, I'm proud to be affiliated with them. But we have, believe it or not, people don't believe it when we say that we have nothing to do with it, although, Bako does fund that pretty much every year.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. Indeed, it is the foundation. Anyways, I want to thank you, Shauna Shapiro. She's got an open invitation, by the way, to come on Dean's Chat. I've talked to her.
I think she would like that, yeah.
For sure. But I want to thank you for all you do. Bill, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about your formative years. How did you discover podiatric medicine? And then how did you make the decision to go to Barry University with their inaugural class?
Like everybody else, we all have different pathways in life. When I was younger or in high school, I wanted to be a photographer, or I wanted to be a baseball player, or, some glamorous job. When I went to University of Miami, believe it or not, I had 3 or 4 scholarships for photography and photojournalism, because I won a ton of awards in high school and had a lot of stuff published. So, if you were going to ask me what was the perfect job or what I wanted to be, it would have been a photojournalist. Now, that sounds sexy and glamorous. And when I get invited to photograph the Miss USA or a Formula One or the Dolphin games, that was so exciting to be a photographer on the front line. The problem is that, photojournalism doesn't pay very well. Okay. Just like a lot of jobs in the arts, it's a lot of fun, but they don't pay well. And my father was a surgeon. My mother was a nurse, and my uncle was a podiatrist. And really what it came down to is how do I have a certain work-life balance, okay, where I can have the freedom to pursue my passions like photography or, collecting cars or watches or taking care of my family and be able to travel to exotic places and still have the money or funds available to do that, or freedom to do that. And certainly, I'm not saying that, you make decisions based upon money, because I think at a certain level there is more money doesn't mean more happiness. More money means more problems. But quite honestly, I knew that I couldn't achieve the goals that I wanted with photography. Now, if I was the best in the world, okay, like, of course, some of those people are very well. And back in the day, we didn't have Instagram. We didn't have, these influencers. You had to have 35 millimeter cameras. You had to develop your film and, do it yourself or take it to a lab and wait a few days. I was just happy if images were in focus, composed well, and have proper lighting. That was a win. Now, our cell phone cameras, I just got back from a wonderful trip to Germany and Switzerland, and the only camera I took with me was my iPhone, and the pictures are stunning. So what happens is, when I started looking at going to medical school, and my sister decided to go to medical school, and I just the more and more I looked at my own father's lifestyle. Yes, he made a lot of money. Yes, he was very successful as a surgeon. But he did end up missing a lot of my baseball games, and a lot of times we're on vacations or having dinner, and his pager was going off. That's before cell phones even existed. And I said to myself, if I go to medical school, more likely than not, I'm going to, be pressured to going into the work with my father, which isn't the end of the world. But I thought, when I looked at podiatry, I really said, wow, what a great job this is, because this is really something that is 9 to 5. If I want to take Fridays off, I can do it. Weekends are pretty free. Nobody's really dying on you or calling you with major. Now, again, if you do ER call or high risk stuff, it's different. But what I saw was an opportunity that I could be not only a physician, but I could also now have the freedom to do other passions that I wanted to pursue, whether it's boating or photography or any other activity. And that is really the work-life balance that appealed to me the most. It had nothing to do with foot care or ankle care or podiatry. And quite honestly, I never looked at podiatry as a second choice. I didn't even experience discrimination until I was probably a junior and going into the hospitals where some people, treated me differently because I'm a podiatrist and not an MD. I just didn't think that way. I was just happy to be a physician. And I was also happy that I knew what my profession was going to be. Where my sister going into medical school, you go to medical school for 4 years, you still don't know what you're going to be. And she ends up being internal medicine, which is good for her. But by today's standards, being an internal medicine doctor is very, very difficult. Okay. And if you want a glamour job like orthopedics or, dermatology or ophthalmology, those are only going to maybe, 2 or 3 students out of 200. So getting those, desirable positions would be devastating to me after spending 4 years in medical school and finding out I'm going to be a pediatrician if I don't like children. And that's what I really liked about podiatry is that, I felt it was something that I could master, I could be good at. And it also incorporated a lot of different practices like orthopedics and dermatology and, surgery and medicine and putting it all together. It was very appealing to me. So literally, Barry University was announced in the Miami Herald newspaper. That's back in the day that you would read newspapers. And I was always an avid reader of newspapers all through high school, all through college. I was an avid reader. And I think I picked that up from, my parents. And that was a primary information source. I always wanted, I never watched a lot of TV. I never watched a lot of the news, but I'm an avid reader. And what happened was Barry University is starting a podiatry school. Now, here I am at University of Miami, and my first question is, where is Barry University?
Oh my gosh.
I've lived in South Florida my whole life. And what makes it worse is that I'm Catholic and this is a Catholic school. Of course, I should have known about this. Now, if you would have told me that it was an all-girls school, then maybe you might have gotten my attention when I was younger. But the fact is that I decided to really get in my car and drive to Barry University like a day or two after it was announced. So I said, look, I want to apply to your school. And they literally gave me a one-page application, which was the same front and back thing to the undergrad. I filled it out, sent over my transcripts. I'm pretty sure I was the first, person to apply. So I decided to go visit Barry University, and which is basically right down the street from University of Miami. And when I went into the admission office, they didn't have a specific application for the podiatry school. It was literally just announced like a day or two in the newspaper. So I said, look, I want to apply to your school. And they gave me an undergraduate application, which is one page front and back. I filled it out, gave it to them, sent over my transcripts, sent over my MCAT scores. I'm pretty certain, I don't have proof of that I was the first student to actually apply to the school, and I'm pretty certain I was the first one to be accepted. But I was very, very proud to be an inaugural member of the first class at Barry University. That was really in 1985, graduating in 1989.
Right.
And there was only, I think, 16 or 18 students in our class, and it was cool, yeah.
Oh, that's incredible, Bill. So let me ask you a question about you said your uncle was a podiatrist.
Yes.
So you knew what podiatry was all about. Did you spend time with him?
Yeah, of course. Well, what happened is that, this is basically my father's brother, and he was a podiatrist. And again, I was able to spend some time in his office. I would spend time in my father's office. I even considered being an orthodontist because that appealed to me. I really liked radiology. I did rotations in radiology because I was very interested in photography. So I was kind of merging. I was really, I was very young and really in college at that time, exploring careers. And really, what it boils down to is I wanted to do something interesting and fun. I said, if I have to go to work or do this the rest of my life, I should at least enjoy it. Okay, and even podiatry now, I look back at my career. And I'm not going to say I enjoy cutting every toenail of every patient who walks in the door, but I don't think there was ever a day that I woke up saying, I hate my job, or I'm not looking forward to my job, because it's such a great career for me, and because it opens up so many doors and allowed me to pursue passions. It allowed me to be a professional, to help people, and also make a what I consider to be a very good living.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you ended up doing your residency in California.
Yeah.
And then you came back to South Florida to practice.
Yeah.
And I get the sense that you like to have a lot of balls in the air, because your technology background is something I think we need to delve into, Bill. It's fascinating. I had no idea before you sent me your CV, the amount of technology you had early in the 90s. Do you mind sharing some of that, how you got started and what it turned into?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it started at University of Miami when, I bought my first TRS-80 computer, which was black and white, a cassette drive. And then when Apple came out, I got my first Apple II computer. But the reason I got into computers, quite honestly, because I like video games, and I was tired of spending all those quarters at the arcade. But I was really, really fascinated with computers, movies like war games. And it was just something that when this is way pre-internet. So when I got my first computer, we did things like games or basic word processing. And for me, my handwriting is pretty bad, and my spelling at the time wasn't very good. So when I had to type up papers for school, you had to do it on a typewriter, and it was very laborious. So just a word processor that could do formatting and spell checking, that was a miracle to me. So if I had a machine to help me do that, that just makes my life easier. And then when I got my first modem, it was so slow, you could literally read the words as it goes across the screen. But what that ended up doing is opening up the entire world, because now I can have conversations with people on the other side of the world through a modem. And at the time, we take it for granted right now, but back in the day, that was something that was very unique. So when I was in podiatry school, I decided to form a company called Podiatric Computer Consultants. Okay, this is when I'm probably a second year student, because everybody would ask me questions, including, like my father, uncle, other people, that I knew a lot about computers, so I could actually help them pick out design systems, install it for them. These are DOS days, even before Windows. And then when I met Barry Block with PM News or Podiatry Management, he actually asked me to write an article. So I was publishing articles on computers and podiatry technology while I'm still an undergrad. And I even was invited to lecture at the FPMA SAM meeting, although I wasn't the featured lecturer because I was a student at the time. I had to be underneath somebody else's wing. But I actually taught a course in computers way back in the 80s. And then that evolved into, during my residency, we had to keep surgical logs. At the time, you had a sheet of paper, you would do it on a typewriter or write it in. I'm like, okay, this is stupid. I can create a database to do this. So myself and Dr. Maurice Perry, my junior resident, decided to create this program. We called it PodLog, and it was nothing more than a fancy database for our surgical training, where you put all our categories, doctors. And there just happened to be that year we were up for accreditation. So when the accreditation came in and they saw my reports and I could tell them graphs and charts and numbers of surgeries, they freaked out. And basically, like a week later, I get a phone call from someone at APMA saying, hey, would you be interested in selling this software so we can give them to every resident in the country? And we're going to offer you double your yearly salary to buy the source code. And I'm like, wait a minute, I just did this for fun to make my life easier. Now I can double my yearly salary just by saying yes? And the answer, of course, was yes. So we ended up, selling that, and that was called, I think it was called DR Star. They changed the name of it, Surgical Tracking Residency Reporting or something like that. But DR Software, also out of Atlanta, was involved as a sponsor for that. And again, it was awesome. And when I got back into private practice, I just set up the first website for the Florida Podiatric Medical Association. At the time, everybody was going for the .org, and I recognized the value in the .com. So I ended up registering fpma.com. I did it in my own name, and I ran their website for a few years. And I just handed that off to them. They're like, here you go. A few years later, you can take it over. But that was that fpma.com would be really quite valuable if I would have kept it. I did own podiatrist.com. I forgot to register it, lost it. I still own onychomycosis.com. And probably my favorite one of all was I registered gout.com. Originally, I'm going way back in the early 90s. And then right around 1999 or Y2K, I get this mysterious phone call from an attorney saying, hey, would you be interested in selling gout.com? And I'm like, well, you can make me an offer. And they said, well, we'll give you $50,000 for it. And I'm like, wait a minute, this just cost me like $7. Okay. So, and it's right around Y2K. So if you remember anything about Y2K, everything was going to crash at that time. So I'm like, wait a minute, I can make like an easy $50,000. So, of course, I said, yes, I'm going to sell this. And it was Abbott Laboratories who bought it. I'm like, that was the stupidest thing I could have ever done. They probably would have given me $250,000. Or if I would have kept it today, it'd probably be worth more. But I still do own onychomycosis.com. I give Dr. Tracy Vahovic, I know, is very jealous of that because she has a license plate called Fun Gal, and she's written books. But I said, but I own, you can Google onychomycosis.com and you get my LinkedIn page. I said, so yes. So, but one of these days I'm going to do something with that.
No, I love it. That's
other than
great.
that, and then I decided to, when I was getting board certified, I of course, I took all the courses and the Goldfarb seminar up in Pennsylvania. The Barry University had a board prep, and I think I took 3 board prep classes because if I'm going to get board certified, I just don't want to fail this thing. And at the time that I went through, you had to be, I think it was board eligible first, and then you were board qualified second, and then finally board certified third. So, and then I decided to do not only the surgical boards, but the medicine boards. So I was taking so many tests at that time and spending so much money and traveling. I'm like, look, I'm just going to do this once. The last thing I want to do is fail it. So I studied very hard for that. But through studying, I said, well, there should be a computer program to help. And I had this idea to to create a test prep software for podiatry. But the problem was nobody knew who I was. So I remember rotating in Atlanta at the Peachtree Podiatry Group, which is Dr. McGlamory and Rook and some of these guys. And there's a Dr. David Marcinko. And David and I hit it off pretty well. And he published a lot of articles and published a lot of books. And I said, Dave, I have this idea for a software. I said, how about I do all the coding, do all the software, do all the manuals, everything ready to go, but we use your book as content. And then we split the money 50-50. And he's like, yes, deal. So we signed a contract. We formed a company called Foot and Ankle Research Consortium, which the word is FARC. And if you know anything about terrorism in the world now, FARC is like one of these groups you don't want to mess with. So we probably could have chosen a better name at the time. But we ended up, we sold thousands of those things. I was making more money in software than I was in practice. And then investing in the stock market and buying, AOL.com and Intel and, stocks and stuff like that. So technology is part of my DNA, and even today, I still feel the same way. But it's also, I guess the word today is called side hustle. Everyone wants to have a side hustle. We didn't call it back then, and the more I think about it, maybe I do have ADHD, or I've got OCD, or maybe I've got a combination of both of those. Although I don't want to admit it or like to think about it, but really, what I like to say is I get bored really easily. So what happens is I'm super intellectually curious, and I'm always looking to reinvent the wheel or do something slightly better. Or if I sense a business opportunity, I'm all down. And that's kind of how those things evolved. And it's been a great ride where I forget the exact year, but around 1995 or 6 or so, after starting the podiatry market, doing test prep for the surgical and medicine boards. Again, I read the newspaper. Florida students are failing the high school exit exam, and I know it sounds so simple, but so much of my life has been dictated by what has appeared in the newspaper, and me sensing an opportunity or problem, and then creating a solution for that. And that says, you can watch Shark Tank all you want, but the theme is somebody is either solving a problem or they're providing a service or a product that is desirable. That's it, okay? Now, I know that sounds simple, but you have to find what you're good at or passionate, or you have to find a problem that you can solve and then try to make money on it. I never, ever, ever put money first. I always am passionate with the idea or the product or what I'm doing, and making money is almost a byproduct, or it's collateral, or it's an accident. It's really a byproduct of passion and hard work and energy. It's never the goal. If you set a goal of becoming a multimillionaire and that's your only goal, you're going to fail. If you decide to set a goal to create, some new product or new service, and you really, really, really work it hard, and you're lucky and you're innovative, then you'll become a millionaire. That's the way it is.
I love this, Bill. This is a great discussion. So what you've got a tolerance for risk then too. I've had this discussion with a lot of entrepreneurs, and necessity is the mother of invention, of course, but the ability to tolerate risk and put a lot of time and effort into something that may or may not be financially beneficial down the road is unique.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because the older you get, okay, or the older I get, I should say, I'm finding I'm a little less tolerant of risk than I was, because for me to fail now is going to hurt a lot more than when I was younger. Meaning I'm higher up the ladder. Like if you're climbing a ladder, the first 3-4 feet is no big problem. You get up to about 6 feet, okay, you're going to slow down. But when you're like 15 feet up on the ladder and you're looking down, you're going to get hurt if you fall. So what I find is that I've gotten a lot more fiscally conservative, although if you look at my Facebook page and spending on my toys or vacations or food, you might not come away with that impression. But what happens is I'm still funding startups. I'm still involved in a little bit with artificial intelligence. I've invested in an energy drink. There's all sorts of crazy things, that you have to try, and you have to be willing to fail. I mean, and I see no shame in failing. As I tell my son when he failed at something, I said, look, you can't think of it as a failure. You just have to think about it is that you have now discovered a way that doesn't work. Okay, and let's try something different.
Yeah, it's not win or lose; it's win or learn.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And look, when you have your own money riding, so for example, I wouldn't think twice about putting down, let's say, $10,000 on an interesting investment. But if it's 100,000 or $1 million, then I'm going to be really, really, really much more cautious because, again, when I was younger, I was faced with that opportunity many, many times. And what I did, after I developed the podiatry software, I applied to where I created a company called Test Tools, where I developed K-12 educational software for the high-stakes standardized test. And that's back when, under the Bush era, when you had No Child Left Behind, I ended up creating a whole business making millions of dollars selling test prep software to the schools to pass these high-stake standard exams for Florida and California. And I did extremely well with that. And then it got to the point where, okay, are we going to leverage over? And when the business model started to change, when we had to either reinvent the software or do more internet-based or other stuff, I was really faced with this situation is that, do I want to spend a ridiculous amount of money, or do I want to now sell the company and walk away and basically be retired at 45 years old? And I chose that path.
Yeah, good move. Good move. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about some of your passions besides working in the podiatric medical field and developing new computer programs to help the world. You are a foodie. What kind of food do you like?
Well, it's more like what food don't I like? But I do have a sweet tooth. I'm very weak when it comes to desserts. I do need to diet and exercise, of course. That's always my never-ending New Year's resolution. I would probably the favorite phrase that somebody described me, because I'm a big into Yelp because I travel a lot. I'm a Yelp elite user for 11 or 12 years. That's a super geeky term, by the way. I've written over 1,000 reviews on Yelp. Again, nobody's paying me to do that. It's just something I do for fun. And I really enjoy going to Michelin star restaurants. When I travel, I got the Michelin app on my phone. I got Guy Fieri's Dine-In app on my phone. So somebody said, and this is my best friend, Rick, who I knew from high school. He's not a podiatrist. He said, what I like about Bill the best is that he can be equally happy eating Chick-fil-A or going to the French Laundry eating Michelin 3 stars. So the fact of the matter is that, that's pretty accurate because I eat Chick-fil-A a lot. And then also when I travel, I really do enjoy going to Michelin star type restaurants or, Beard award-winning chefs. I want to go to an iconic place when I'm in, Arizona. I'm going to go, towards Southwest food. When I'm in New York, I might go to a Michelin 2-star sushi restaurant. I just got back from Germany and Switzerland. I'm eating schnitzel and spätzle and raclette and all the other stuff. So what happens is it's more about that I really enjoy, because first and foremost, I'm a terrible cook. I'm a terrible dancer and I'm a terrible singer. Okay, so those are my weaknesses. Let's just get that out of the way. Okay, but what happens is I'm a really good eater. Okay, so what happens is to be able to go towards either a total dive that is the best Caribbean jerk chicken you've ever had in a very not so nice part of town, or going to a Michelin 1, 2, 3-star restaurant and then dining at what you consider Thomas Keller, one of the world's best chefs, or a Gordon Ramsay restaurant. The artistry in the food preparations and the quality of the ingredients and how they tell a story, because most Michelin restaurants have a tasting menu. You don't have to think. It's like omakase, but you just sit down and they bring food to you. But the food does tell a story, and it goes through an arc, and it's something I could never create. Okay, that's beyond my skill or capabilities. But the fact that I can now participate with this and enjoy these flavors, Chicago again, Rick Bayless has some of the best Mexican food I've ever had in my life. Alinea, okay, again, Michelin 3-star, crazy, foods that are out there. So for me, it's more of a vacation while going and eating these flavors. And look, every once in a while you're going to get a dud, right? I mean, like I'm not into some of these vegetarian vegan type foods, but again, my wife is keeps always tricking me sometimes with some good flavors that she finds. But for me, again, I travel a lot, and probably the first thing I do when I go to a new city, even if I'm traveling with Bako Diagnostics and podiatry, I'm literally going to Yelp or TripAdvisor or Talk or Resi or the Michelin Guide to find out what is the most iconic restaurant to go to. Okay, do I go to a hot dog place in Chicago? Do I go to the deep dish pizza, or do I go to Michelin Star? And sometimes I do all three on the same day.
I love it. Yeah. Well done. Now, you're also a watch enthusiast. So if I were to ask you what time it is and you look at your watch, what are you looking at right now?
Well, because it's a webinar, I'm going to look at my iPhone. Okay, but basically, again, you reach a certain point in life where it'll sound weird to say, but you run out of things to buy, right? Or you run out of passions. Okay, I mean, truth be told, so you start looking at like, what are fun things to get involved with? And what I really liked about, the watch industry, specifically Rolexes or Patek Philippe, especially, or those are the two brands I collect the most, is that there's a certain mechanical wonder in these mechanical watches. And we're not talking quartz watch. We're talking a certain level of artistry and craftsmanship into creating these timepieces. I just got back from Germany and Switzerland, where one of my cousins traced my family roots back to the 1400s. So I was able to see the original Scherer house and the church where my ancestors came from. But then I also had the opportunity to go to Geneva, where I was given a private tour at the Patek Philippe Watch Museum. And that is the finest watch museum in the world. And I own several Patek Philippe watches. It's my favorite brand. And to be able to see a $23 million watch, okay, but the artistry and craftsmanship that are designed is something that appeals to me. I like steampunk. Okay, that's an art form that I like. Okay, so when I look at the mechanic of a really finely crafted watch, especially Patek Philippe, it just appeals to me on many, many levels. A Rolex, again, indestructible, Submariner, Daytona. These are classic watches that I can wear in Florida, go jump in the water, not think about it, bang it up on a wall, go out driving my convertible car and have fun. I'm going to wear a Rolex. If I'm going to go to a fine dinner, or sometimes I'm going to be a speaking engagement, then I'll probably take one of my Patek Philippe's, because it's a very, very classic, elegant watch that just is stunningly beautiful.
That's outstanding. Yeah. Very good. Well, we're running out of time, but I have a very important question to ask you. What would you tell a prospective student that is considering a career in podiatric medicine?
Well, unfortunately, I've had that question quite a few times. But first and foremost, you have to be realistic and say, okay, the truth of the matter is podiatry is a limited license profession. But that's not unlike being a radiologist. You're just reading x-rays. Or if you are going to be a rheumatologist, you're going to be doing arthritis. So being a podiatrist is nothing different than any other medical specialty. But you have to enjoy the field of podiatric medicine. You have to enjoy taking care of patients. And the fact that we work with our hands so much, this is not like something sitting back and reading a report. You actually have to do things, okay, whether it's putting on a cast or cutting a toenail or doing a bunion surgery. So if you're not good with your hands, if you can't hang a painting on your wall, okay, or you can't change a spare tire of a car, podiatry might not be the best job for you. Okay. But number two is the fact that, there are so many different specialties in podiatry, whether you go into surgery or whether you go into sports medicine or whether you go into teaching or geriatrics, you want to kind of identify a niche that you can be happy with. And then basically, you also have to make sure that you're making a wise financial decision, because whether you go, it's expensive to go to school now. Student loans are high, interest rates are high, and you want to make sure that commitment is something that not only will pay off for you, but that you also understand your responsibility towards paying down some of your debt or investing in your future. So I would definitely shadow a one or two podiatrists. I lecture at all 11 schools, and I really give them two pieces of advice. Number one, try to find somebody that you look up to, like a mentor. And there's so much negativity online or even in podiatry, but ignore the noise and find the one or two doctors that you respect. Say, I really want to be. Now, when I was in school, everybody wanted to be Keith Kashuk down in South Miami. Sure. He had the best practice. He was the coolest dude. He was the guy everybody wanted to be. Okay. And the fact of the matter is that you need to find someone like that. And then that's who you look up to, and that's who you model, not on somebody who you don't respect or what you want to be. So that's really what I would look at. I'm very optimistic with the future of podiatry. Do we have problems? Yeah, we have problems just like every other profession, but they're really solvable problems. And the fact of the matter is that, look, our time on earth is relatively short, and in a blink of an eye, I can look back. I'm embarrassed to say, that I graduated podiatry 33 years ago, and when I spoke to older doctors at the time, or even my grandparents, they all tell me the same thing. As the older you get, the faster time goes, and you have to enjoy. Life is a journey. You have to actually enjoy every day. You can't think of being podiatry as a means to an end, that if I go to podiatry, I'm going to make this much money, I'm going to be able to buy a house, a car, and then I'll be happy. You really need to be happy with your decision, with the journey of being a podiatrist. And if that's right for you and you can answer those questions, by all means, I say go for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said, Bill. Well, Bill, I wanted to thank you for all you do for our profession, and thank you for making the annual trip out to Arizona to train up my students.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Hopefully again. Yes.
Absolutely. And what I wanted to do is let you know that we're going to send you one of these Dean's Chat cups. You're going to need something to go with those Michelin dinners and I'll
take it out with me next time
in the hot dog stands. And so, to all of our listeners out there, thank you so much for listening to Dean's Chat. If you are listening on Apple or Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating. And if you're watching on YouTube, please become a subscriber. Bill, thanks again. And I look forward to talking with you soon. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.
Right. Yeah, well, here we go. I'll hold up my Mickey Mouse glass here.
I love it. There we go. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.